There we go. All right. Well, good to see you guys in another week here on Blab. We never really officially decided what our name for our gathering was, but I know what our topic today is. So while we're still figuring out if we're going to call this Weekly Blab anything, and you guys are having a lot of fun with the the props there, I want to say that Kim came up with this idea yesterday to chat about the importance of public speaking as a business growth mechanism. And it's something I'm really interested in because while you guys, the two of you, have plenty of experience getting up in front of audiences live, I've probably done it maybe 12.5 times throughout my entire life. So it's probably still more than many people, but I don't do it to grow my business. So I know I'm going to be learning a lot from you. So I just before we went on the air, Nathan was telling us this potentially true story that was just so fantastic. And I said, a story like that has got to be a great opener for a live presentation, because it's one of those things that gets people's attention, right? You tell a fun story, you engage them, you draw them into the moment, and then you can go on with your presentation. And that probably is the type of story that has the potential to get an audience attention. So for the benefit of those who weren't here when you were telling it before I hit record,
Great.
I'm going to recount this, and then I'm curious how. And I'm putting you completely on the spot. How can you use it effectively? Because you can.
Yeah.
There's so many lessons in the I was going to say stupidity of what you just did, but in the experience you just had, that you can tie that into a great live presentation.
Well, there's this great story about a woman who gets off of her plane. Her luggage has been lost, and she goes up to the flight attendant at the kiosk, and she says, "Hey, my luggage has been lost." And the gal says, "Don't worry about it, ma'am. We've got you covered. I just need to ask you a couple quick questions." And she says, "Yeah, no problem." And she says, "Has your plane landed yet?" They walk among us, these type of people. So, I had prepped for this. I got everything ready. My computer was open. I was on the page, and all of a sudden I hear this hailstorm of something outside. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? I open the door, I look outside, and there's hail pouring down. So I grab my camera, I walk outside, I'm recording this really cool video, and I feel the door close behind me. And I'm like, no worries, I don't lock the doors. Evidently, the door was locked. So I turned to go get back in the house, couldn't get in the house. Now, I have two fail-safes. I have a fail-safe with my phone that I can open our front door, and I have the garage keypad. Well, the phone is in my office that I couldn't get to it, and the keypad is evidently dead on our garage door. So by some string of luck, I was able to put myself in the corner of somewhere and get my wife on my phone, and I was like, or my watch, and said, "Hey, please unlock the door." And that's not even the worst of it. Our small dog is in my downstairs office, which she loves to chew on things. And I've probably got a couple $100 worth of recording equipment just laying out on the floor because I was playing around with it before this. So, it's funny because we all do stupid things. Yet many of us would never admit to them in public. And one of the great things about admitting your shortcomings on stage or in front of anyone is all of a sudden you get a immediate connection with just about anyone. Mm-hmm. When we paint ourselves in such a real, vulnerable place, people go, "Oh man, I remember the time that I locked my keys in the car." I've done it like 100 times. I can't tell you how many times that I've locked myself out of the house. I even have lock picks hidden around the yard usually so I can go and pick my lock to get back in my house. Haven't been here long enough to evidently hide those. But I mean, that's a great piece, an opener to talk to an audience, to say, you know what? I'm human just like you. I'm still figuring things out, like not locking the door behind me and not getting excited about the quick, amazing video shots of hail coming down in Oregon. I would use that more, and not necessarily for a piece of maybe of teaching, but I would use that as a really strong opening just to connect with people, just to say, hey, you know what? Have you ever been in that situation where you've done something stupid and you wish no one would ever share it?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're on a call and someone says, hey, tell us that story that just happened, 10 seconds ago.
So Kim, this was a topic that you wanted to cover, and I'm curious. Do you have a way to sort of capture an audience's attention, like a story like that, or something else that you do when you do public presentations? Because I know that you speak certainly a lot more than I do, and I'm curious how do you do you have any routine or any mechanism to start off to really get people in the moment with you?
I do, and I think that what Nathan's saying about having a story is a really good point, because when you have a story and you know it like the back of your hand, it gives you like this certain confidence when you're out there, and you know you've said it enough times that you know it's going to work, and you know that it's going to genuinely get their attention. And I first came across this, I'd say probably about 15, 17 years ago. I was a rep for a company, and I quickly found out that I needed to be the cheerleader. That was my job. I got paid on every transaction that happened in the state of Oregon. So my job was to get the word out. They had a customer service department. I was to get the word out. So I would go and I would speak in front of groups. And I would always start out with the same little story. And I'll just tell you in a nutshell, the story was something like, I had this problem, I didn't know what to do about it, found this program, and long story short, I was able to get somebody into a house for $7. Here's how I did it. Mm. And people would just be like, wow, $7? And having that story just right there in my hip pocket, I knew once I said that story that I owned them. That was it.
Great.
Hey, so the story is huge. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. So you got to have a story about whatever it is that you're trying to promote.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
The other thing that I wanted to say too about public speaking is I always think of myself as a really good writer. My degree is in creative writing. I love to write. I always think of myself as a really good writer. But I will tell you that my writing has never gotten the kind of response that standing in front of a group and speaking from the heart has gotten. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think it's so important to develop that skill, because if you want a response, I think what I read was something like 7% comes from what you write, and all the rest of it comes from how you come across.
No, absolutely. I think that's one of the main, I'm not a live person, but I do a lot of this stuff. I do the video stuff, right? And we see a ton more coming from video these days in terms of content production. And and by the way, Kim and Nathan, we've got some guests here who are actively participating in the chat on the side, which is fun. It's maybe a first time for us to have more than one guest. So welcome to everybody over there just chatting away, and thanks for your comments. And yes, Bob, I have had the pleasure of meeting and chatting with Mike in the past, and great to have him here as well. So thanks for making the additional introduction. Anyway, Kim, back to the question about video, or about live versus written word. It's the way that I think a lot of us are used to consuming stuff these days, is from hearing and seeing somebody's face, somebody's body language, whether it's video or it's in person, and it's a much more effective way to consume material for a lot of us than the written word these days. And so I totally get what you're talking about in terms of the way that you can impact people in the work that you're doing.
Well, I think that one of the biggest shocks for me was, I can't remember if it was you who told me this or somebody else was telling me that the number one search engine right now is YouTube.
Actually, I would say they're the number 2 search engine, and that's a stat that I always pull, and I always talk about. Nathan, you had a reaction to that, yeah?
It makes a lot. Well, we have a lot. What is it? DIY, yeah, DIY, do it yourself kind of people.
Yep.
So we're always looking for a video to show us how to do. I know. Yeah. I'm guilty of doing that tons of times because I want to know how to. Like, hey, how do you get back into your house without breaking windows?
Yep. And don't take forever to tell me how to do it either. I want a like 1 minute and 45-second video. I'm looking for the shortest video.
All right. Well, look, this is not the subject at hand, but I do want to say that that's exactly what we're doing here is we're creating content to answer questions or to address a topic, and that's what those YouTube videos are about. Ultimately, it's a way to position yourself as an authority. Oh, do you notice that she's just disappearing off the screen? She was being very slick, trying to not not let us notice it, but. What's going on there, Kim? Anyway, the idea behind a lot of the video production on YouTube, and I'm going to get back to how this relates to public speaking, but it's about creating a certain degree of authority for yourself, but it's also a great way to have content that's yours that may lead back to your business and you being a solution provider to the type of people that you're trying to provide answers to. All sorts of special effects going on in that corner right now. That's looking good. I like it. You got perspective now.
Well, my face was so dark, I couldn't see much less anybody else. And then you said you were filming it, and then I went, oh my gosh, it matters.
Right. So. But that's exactly what you do in terms of positioning your authority and giving out great information when you're doing public speaking as well. It's not that different from YouTube.
Yeah.
So I'm curious because we talked about the idea of growing businesses through public speaking. Is there a formula? Is there an approach that one ought to take when engaging in public speaking to grow their business? What types of businesses does it work for? What types of businesses would be worth investing the time and energy in getting out in front of the public?
Do you want to go, Nathan?
No, go for it.
All right. So for me, when I get in front of groups, I want to get in front of groups that are already that already care about self-development, because that's what I do is self-development. Mm-hmm. And so for me, really good groups to get in front of are real estate groups, mortgage lending groups, insurance groups, groups that already have a culture of hiring coaches and that are already looking for their personal best, that want to grow and develop. So they usually have lunch meetings. I'll offer a lunch and learn, or sometimes I'll just come in and offer to speak during their weekly meeting or during their monthly meeting, whatever it is.
Yeah. Hey, Mike. Yeah, we're aware that Kim's audio isn't great, and we've talked to her about investing in a good microphone. So thank you for letting us know. And Joe Public 7, whose name I didn't look for yet. Actually, Nathan, you answered that question or that comment there. Do you want to speak a little bit about your thoughts on that comment?
Yeah, because we could. I don't want to get into any politics here. So if we had someone stand up and make some crazy claims, the people who are going to trust that person's claims are the people who actually know, like, and trust that person. Mm-hmm. If you absolutely despise the person that's speaking, that type of information you're not going to really care about. So one of the biggest things that you have to do with your audience is you have to get to know them. You have to build rapport. You have to have a connection with them. David, you've been on the internet for years now, and you've been building.
Shows, doesn't it?
It really does. Just for men. But you've been building rapport.
I have no issues with this. I'm okay. I don't need just for men. Anyway, go ahead.
You've been building rapport with people for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a bunch of people that the first day you jumped on and you said, hey, you should do this, this, and this when it comes to marketing. People didn't really take you seriously at first. They had to get to know you. They had to trust you. And when I say that the information is only as good as the person, you have to know the person and trust that person before you will even consider listening to what they have to say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an important thing to use, like social media, for example, to engage with your audience. It's an important thing is, if you go to a speaking engagement, you don't sit in the back and then they call you up and then you go out the back door and never talk to anyone.
Yeah.
That's not how you develop relationships and connections with the people that you're trying to not only influence, but you're trying to sell to. That's what speaking is. Speaking is selling.
And so there's a comment here about the relevance of the topic, and so Kim, I want to go back to what you were talking about in terms of the audiences that you get in front of and the types of things that you are going to present to them. Is topic relevance important when it comes to them, when it comes to you, or does it not matter? Obviously, you're not going to get a bunch of people in a room who aren't going to have any interest in the topic, but does it have to be a topic that you are an expert in and that you are the solution provider for?
Yeah. Yes, it does. It does have to be a topic that I know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
As a coach, there's part of it is giving them something worthwhile that they can implement.
Okay.
And finding out specifically what it is that they want. In my example of realtors and lenders, most of them want to increase their production. And since I have a broad background in sales, and since I have a lot of things that I teach and coach in sales, it's a perfect fit.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go into a group of artists probably and talk about art. I'm not an artist.
Right. But what about going to a group of an audience where you can lend your expertise? So going to artists and talking about how to sell, how to add your perspective, your worldview to what they're doing in their world.
Yeah. That's a good example of what I could bring to the art world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, let's sort of talk a little bit about those types of businesses out there that it makes sense to get in front of audiences, and how you go about getting in front of audiences. I mean, you guys do this on a regular basis as part of your business building.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
for somebody who's going out there for the first time, who's trying to get in front of either their target audience or referral partners, just to raise their profile in their community, how would you start out?
There's a number of different ways you can start out. I guess it depends on what you're trying to do, what the specific purpose of your speaking is. If you're trying to go out and you're trying to sell a product, then you need to figure out where these people are going so you can try and get on the speaking roster for it. There's plenty of networking events. There's chamber events that you can sign up. You could pay to go and speak at. Exactly what Joe just said. There's local advertising that you could use. On the other side, if you're just getting into this and you want to just get your feet wet, find a group where you can actually go and practice speaking. Go to a chamber event where they ask you to give a 30-second spot of what your business is and practice your spot every single day, 2 or 3 times a day, so that when you get up, you give it. I would go to networking events, and people would ask me, hey, can you give like a 2-minute talk on a subject? Oh yeah, no problem. Now to everyone else, I had just come up with this miracle of a speech that sounded great. But what most people don't understand is that whatever I was giving that day, I had been practicing for months. Mm-hmm. It wasn't something that I just pulled out of my back pocket and I was like, oh my gosh, let's try this. It was something that I had rehearsed and practiced. And so if you have a specific reason for speaking, like your business, you first start by tailoring what the message is that you want. And like what you've said a number of times to me, David, what is the outcome? What is the next step for people? What do you want people to do? If you go in and you speak somewhere and you give all these great happy feelings and then you leave the room and that's it, well, that's it. But if you give all these great happy feelings and you say, hey, I brought 15 copies of my brand new book on how to be happy and create your feelings and blah, 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 then all of a sudden you've created a sales piece for people in the very back of the room to go and engage with it at the end. And so for me, it really depends on what the purpose of you speaking is. If it's to make your business aware, then go and speak anywhere. If it's to grow your reputation, you could go just about anywhere in specific industries and just give a small minute piece. Mm-hmm. Chambers and rotaries are good too.
This is a motif we have heard. Well, you guys are both involved in those types of groups, Toastmasters and the chambers and other civic organizations, right? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. So, all right. So I just want to pick up on something that Nathan, you just said, and probably has come up in every single discussion that the three of us have had here on Blab so far. And it's having goals. It's having a specific outcome that we're trying to achieve. And I think that is always an important driver in anything that we're doing. And clearly when you're getting up in front of an audience, you need to have a sense of where you want to bring that audience. Right. I don't do a lot of this in person, but I do it virtually. Mm-hmm. Where do you want to bring that audience from the connection that you the title of your presentation, right? What they're showing up for, and that there's some either inferred or completely overt suggestion of what they're going to get out of it. Right, that's what they're going to come in to the room in the first place for. That's what they're going to turn on the computer and watch the video for. Mm-hmm. That's why we've attracted people here, because we've told them that they're going to learn how to grow their business through public speaking. So having a specific outcome, not only as your personal goal as the presenter, but also informing the audience. This is what you're going to get out of this when you show up. I think it's really important. Kim.
So what helps me with that is to hold a little outline in my head. And sometimes there'll be questions and I can get sidetracked, but I can always pull back to that outline. And that outline always helps me to deliver what I said that I was going to deliver. So my outline always looks like this. It looks like, well, I start out with my little story about whatever it is that I'm talking about. And it's, here's what it is. Here's how it works. Here's why it works. And here's how you can use it to grow your business or whatever the goal is. Mm-hmm. And so when I go through it in my head, I'll say to myself, okay, I already dealt with this. I already dealt with that. I already dealt with that. Okay, here's how you can use it. And I always end on that. Here's how you can use it to grow your business. And I keep it short and sweet, and it works.
So, all right. So I've heard variations on that formula, and I really like the formula that you laid out for us. And I'm sure that when you embed this on your blog, you'll list that formula down below here for people to see, right?
Yeah.
So here's some other variations on presentation setup that I've been taught, and I'd love your reactions to this. So one is that just this happens very often in TED Talks. It's a formula that is taught using the TED Talk sort of structure. I think somebody did a study of like 500 TED Talks, and this is what they saw. They saw, all right, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm telling it to you now. Here's what I just told you. All right, so that's part of the formula that we see a lot, because it reinforces the message that is being delivered in the speaking engagement. And then another formula that I've heard a lot, probably closer to what Kim was just talking about, is here's what I've got for you, here's what it's going to do for you, here's what you should do next. And it's sort of bringing them through the path of understanding what it is that you're presenting, and then there's an action that needs to be taken at the end.
Well, the way that I feel is the world is full of good ideas, and we could listen to good ideas all day long, but if we don't implement them or have a desire to implement them, or formula for, implementation is key. Mm-hmm. That's what it all comes down to. And so if there's not something at the end about implementing it and putting it into action, then it's just a good idea.
Capital is key. I like that comment. All right, there was a question that came up that I just want to share here, because Kim, you have a fan in the crowd. Carol wants to know what types of topics you like to talk about, or like most to talk about. So,
okay, I like to talk about overcoming adversity. I like to talk about what does it take to do things when you don't feel like doing anything. I like to talk about leadership. What does it mean to be a leader? Why is leadership important? And I also like to talk about health. I like to talk about actually overcoming adversity is a big one for me.
And I think that actually ties into a lot of what you were just talking about. It ties into health. It ties into leadership. It ties into, what was the second one? I really liked it. How to get things done when you don't feel like doing anything, or something like that. So adversity is really a motif there for you. Yeah. No, I like that.
So many times we are our own worst enemies. Mm-hmm. And if you can slay the dragon within, that's a good day.
Yeah.
That's what I want to leave the world. When I leave this world, I want people to say, you know what? Because Kim was around, I got some things done that I couldn't have done otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're going out there and you're doing lots of presentations between the two of you. Where do you think that you're drawing the most? Have you had topics that you think get a lot more response than others, and what have you learned from that, and how will you capitalize on that going forward? Was that a really tough question, or was that not a well asked question?
I feel like I'm hogging all this space. You go ahead, Nathan.
I've done a number of talks when it comes to personality, and I love talking on personality and the human behavior model, which is known as DISC. Mm-hmm. And I have so many people that come into those classes, and they're just fascinated by it. And what are you going to teach me about? Are you going to predict what I'm going to do in the future? And it's like, no. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get you to be able to communicate more effectively with other people. How do you understand the people that are completely different from you?
Right.
When you bring in a topic that shows light in an area that maybe a lot of people, maybe it's misconstrued a lot. Maybe there's not a lot of clarity on it. A lot of people will tend to jump into that type of discussion or jump into that kind of talk. It was interesting. You were saying the different types of outlines for giving a talk. One of my favorite outlines when it comes to giving a talk is, this is when I was really dumb and I didn't know what to do. This was a teacher that came in and taught me how to do it. Mm-hmm. Then I did it and I became really successful. And now I want to teach you how to do it.
That's good. I like that.
That is by far one of my favorite outlines to do, because most speakers that I hear, they come into the room and they say, look at me. This is everything I've done. And they toot their own horn. And then they say, I'm going to solve your problems. And then we all go, I'm done. But when you all of a sudden you hear the person, you've heard their struggle, you hear where they came from, and all of a sudden you're going, man, how did they do? What were the steps involved to do that? And it's kind of this whole Mr. Miyagi thing. The student becomes the teacher, and the teacher becomes the master, and then
right. Well, you see John's comment over here on the side. The best teachers were the best students, and I think that your comment speaks to that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, the other thing is that you can't be afraid to make a mistake. I think a lot of times when people are tooting their own horns, it's because they're not very experienced, or they feel like, well, I have to make I have to set myself up with some kind of credibility, or, I think that the thing that was the most freeing for me was to come to the realization that I could totally vomit and nobody's even going to care a week from now. You got to get out there and you got to practice. Yeah. You just gotta go with it. And sometimes you're going to make mistakes, and other times you're going to hit the ball out of the park. And ultimately, you'll be hitting the ball out of the park if you keep on going and just get better and better.
So what I've heard a couple of times now also is that there needs to be some consistency in going out there. So people like me who show up and accept a speaking engagement once or twice a year, it's not really going to bring us very much. But if we're out there on a regular basis,
David, your life is a speaking engagement. I've never seen anybody who speaks as much as you do.
I just don't do it here in our community.
You're very humble. Don't even go there with me.
All right. Well, I'm playing the role of somebody who is watching us, wondering how should I do that? And that's really the point, is that you need to be doing it. Whatever you're doing to promote your business, you need to be doing it consistently. Whether it's running a newspaper ad, or showing up on YouTube, or getting out in front of a live audience.
See, the thing that amazes me is I tried to make a video a couple of weeks ago. I was just trying to make like a little 3-minute video. It took me 2 days to make that video. 2 days. I kept recording it and re-recording it and re-recording it. I think there's so much less pressure when you're up in front of people and it's like, it's showtime. I've just
all right, let me speak to that, because it really depends on where you're comfortable. This morning, I extemporaneously recorded 26 short 10 to 15 minute videos, and I built a Udemy course and I uploaded it all, and I'm just waiting for Udemy to approve it. Now, I've done a bunch of courses. I knew the outline of the course. I recorded those videos. I flubbed a bunch of words. I stammered and I stuttered, and I made some mistakes there on the video. But that's my comfort zone. So for you, Kim, to say, it took me 3 days to make a video, or whatever, 2 days to make a 3-minute video, whatever it was, but I can get up in front of live audiences, it's just our comfort zone, and we can teach ourselves how to be comfortable in any of these places and become better and better at it, as long as we are mentally prepared for, look, we're going to screw this up a bunch of times, and then we're going to get better, and we're going to get better, and we're never going to be perfect, and that's good, right?
And that's key.
Yeah,
that's key. The sameness is the death of a speaker. You can't always have the same exact thing. You have to change some things up within your speaking. But at the same time, no one likes to see a perfect mannequin. Like, we can't relate to someone who's perfect and has every single word just right, and they never have an and they never have an you look at some of the best speakers across the industries, like, they've got some really nasty habits that the NSA and Toastmasters would like wag their finger and be like, you're an awful speaker. But yet they make all the money in the world because of what they do, because they're passionate about it. And I think, to what both of you are saying, I can sit down in my little small studio here and I can spend 6 hours trying to record a couple videos, and they're not perfect. And I realize that that's okay. Some speakers, they practice so much that it's perfect that they have to take a step back and then make it imperfect just to get that relatability with their audience. So, we've talked about this, Dave, because when we first met and you were like, hey, tell me about what you think about my videos. And you're like, don't tell me about all my imperfections because I know that they're there and I'm okay with it.
Uh-huh.
And at first I was like, well, that's stupid. Why is that okay? But the more you start to realize that openness should just be human.
Mm-hmm.
Like in your everyday conversations, you're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to mispronounce words like I do half the time. And it's okay. And your audience will hear that and they'll say, okay, I like that. Whether that's on a video that's pre-recorded, which you do have to be slightly careful with that, or whether you're on stage.
Yeah.
There's an important piece to having both of those.
So my go ahead, Kim.
Can I tell you something a little bit embarrassing?
I would love you to.
All right. So what I do before I go in and speak in front of a group is I'll go into the bathroom, and there's nobody in there, and I'll stand in front of a mirror, and I'll just kind of like get my hair kind of like, a little bit, and I'll stand in front of the mirror and I'll pretend like I'm playing air guitar, and for like 1 minute, I just pretend like I'm Nancy Wilson Hart playing Barracuda, and it gets me into this state of mind. And then when I go out, I am stoked, I'm excited, and I nail it. But I've got to manage those emotions before I go in. If I go in without doing something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or the other thing is like, I'll play like Tommy used to work on the dock, in the car when I'm on the and by the time I'm there, I'm just like ready to kick butt and just do it. And so that's big, is managing your emotions before you go on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I have just learned so much more about you than I ever wanted to know. But thank you for sharing that. Hey, Mike, I want to make sure that we address your question. I want to make sure that we address Mike's question, but I want to understand it a little bit more context. Your question is, how do you market to your niche? And I want to know what you're trying to understand in terms of how do you market live speaking to your audience? Is that what you're trying to get at? So if you can just give us a little clarification on the question you're asking, that would be helpful. And then John, you said if you can become comfortable being uncomfortable, you will grow tremendously. And I think I certainly have become really comfortable with being uncomfortable. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, you're very uncomfortable half the time.
As long as I'm not making people uncomfortable, then I think it's okay.
It's similar
on my
to
air guitar.
I heard on the radio. Go ahead.
It's similar to the quote, the first day you have your real laugh at you is the day that you know that you've grown up. When you can stare at yourself on video and laugh your head off, which I do half the times with like bumps like this on my head, when you realize that you're imperfect and it's okay to be that, I'm kind of beating the drum with the same thing, but when you realize that you're not a bed of roses, mm-hmm. and that it's okay, it becomes so much easier that you don't have to stand on stage and pretend to be something you're not. Sure. You stand on stage or you stand on a platform or wherever you are, and you talk from who you are and your heart and your business. And, this is what I do. I help people solve these issues in their business. I help people put hardwood floors down. Whatever it is that you do in your business, speaking can really help in those areas, but you have to be able to be transparent with who you are. Yeah. It's not a facade that you put up.
No, absolutely. So I don't think that we heard back from Mike with a clarification on his question. So I'm going to just rephrase his question, which, he's saying, how do you market to your niche? And I want to understand how you guys, maybe one or two things that you do to, sometimes you're presenting as a guest speaker for other people and they take care of most of the marketing, but very often you're presenting yourself. And you have to get people in the room. So can you talk about what are the most successful approaches getting other people into a room where you're speaking?
Well, for me, what I do is I call up the office manager and I ask if they would like to have a speaker come in and speak at their regular meeting, at their weekly meeting.
Okay, so you're going into already organized audiences.
Exactly. Nathan and I also last year in October, we had a huge leadership seminar. We had over 150 people there. It was a simulcast. We had a trade show. I mean, it was a pretty amazing thing.
Mm-hmm. And what was the best approach to getting people into that?
We went to networking events, spoke in front of networking groups, and told them about it, invited them to be a part of it. And, you know, when you're excited about something, everybody else gets excited about it too.
Nathan, you have anything to add in terms of how you generate an audience?
You know, when I first started doing the speaking and coaching thing, I had the shotgun approach. And I'm not even sure if you could say shotgun. It was more like a bazooka, and I'd point it in one place and shoot and hope that I hit something and something would come out of it. And, it really didn't work well. You know, it really sucks to spend a bunch of money on marketing material to try and get everyone to come to your seminar, to try and get everyone to listen to talk. Because even if you handed, one flyer out to every single person in your community, you'd probably only get like a tenth or maybe even 1% of the people that are going. You know, when Kim and I decided to do this event, this leadership event, we really had to sit down and think, you know, who do we want in our market? Who do we want that is actually going to benefit from this? Yes, everyone could benefit, but who is actually willing to, you know, pay the money to come? Who's not going to look at to take a day off from work? You know, you ask yourself these questions when you begin marketing. Now, since then, Karen and I have become really, really smart in how we market. We try not to market to the masses anymore. We try to go after one fish in an office or in an organization, and we say, hey, we'd love to come and speak to all of your people. We would love for you to bring them all in for us to speak.
Right.
Because there's nothing worse than running around crazy trying to fill up a room. It is the hardest thing. That's one of the great reasons why, you know, chambers are great. Rotary clubs are great. I mean, it's hard to generate a sale exactly at a Rotary club, but you can get a lot of people interested.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking with a good friend of mine, Elle, and I was talking to him. He said he did 200 talks at a Rotary club 2 years ago, and he still has paid gigs from that to this day.
Okay.
So when it comes to generating and bringing an audience in, really the best thing to do is go and find one specific person and then get them to do all the marketing for you.
Right. So we have a few questions, and I know that we're running long on time, but I wanna try to address Michael's question here a little bit. So he has some challenges speaking, addressing audiences. Thank you. And actually, it's the other question that we want to bring up, right? Are you doing that, Nathan? Great.
I can do on this one about public speakers. I do have a thought on that one.
Okay. So we'll talk about Michael's question, and then we'll go to Bob's question. And wow, we're lining up with a bunch of questions now. So after John, I think we need to wrap up because we're running a lot longer than we usually do. So the question here is how to be able to connect with and address customer service professionals for the disabled. And I think it's probably about educating customer service professionals about dealing with disabled or differently abled clientele. That's my guess based on my knowledge, my very limited knowledge of what Michael's working on. Do you either of you guys have any thoughts on reaching this audience?
Well, for me, so I actually did quite a bit of work, about 8 years of work for a company that actually had a lot of service with people who had different types of disabilities. And for me, if I wanted to go and speak to that type of audience, I would look to say, okay, who are the care providers within that industry for me to go and talk to?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're always looking for speakers. They're always looking for someone to speak. Now, the difficult thing is when you get into those very specialized markets, sometimes their budget is extremely, extremely small. They're not necessarily willing to pay you a lot. But if you have other programs in place that the speaking, there are speakers out there that say, I won't go and speak unless I'm getting paid, $5,000 for a speaking engagement. That's great for them. But if I had the opportunity to go in and speak for free, and I said, hey, I'll speak for free, but you have to allow me to sell some products there. If I go in knowing that I'm going to sell products, I could sell products for way more and get way more revenue from that than if I was trying to get paid, quote unquote, as a speaker. A speaker's job is to bring in applications, to bring in processes for other people to implement into their businesses, into life, mm-hmm. to make life better. You shouldn't think of yourself as I'm a paid speaker. You're still a salesman from the stage. You're just selling hope. You're selling tools.
Mm-hmm. So there's one other thing that I might, so thanks, Bob. I think we'll take care of that with the Blab folks, but he's a brand new account, and I think we'll make sure that that account gets closed up pretty soon. Anyway, so I think another area that is kind of important is the subject that people are speaking on, and making sure that the audience is going to recognize the benefit that they're going to get out of that talk. So what's the what's in it for me kind of mentality that that prospective audience might have, and how they're going to benefit either from improved job capabilities, income capabilities, improved quality of service that they're providing. All those sorts of things, I think, are important things to consider in terms of the content that you're putting out there, and if they're going to want to show up or want to tune in to what you're saying. All right, let's move on to Bob's question, which Kim had some thoughts on.
Well, his question is that he was surprised to learn some public speakers don't make their own presentations. About a year ago, I had some interesting experience with that. I was being recruited from a company in Southern California, and what that company did, they were a spinoff from a TV show, and what they did was there was a guru. A lot of times you'll find that coaching companies will have the guru. So there was the guru, and then there were these meetings that you could go to and learn some of the content that you would get by enrolling in that coaching program. And so there happened to be one of those shows like right here in our backyard here in Portland. So I thought, oh, well, this is good, because I was thinking about working for this company as a coach. I thought, well, this is good. I'll go check it out. So I go check it out. It's about a 4-hour seminar about how to sell your house, mm-hmm. or about how to buy investment properties. And it starts out that they're giving you a lot of content, and it was a very soft sell. And as the day goes on and on, it becomes a harder and a harder and a harder sell. So my thoughts on that is that when the guru isn't making his own speeches, a lot of times it is kind of like a sales pitch. You're going, and it's going to turn out to be a big sales pitch. So personally, when I hear speakers, if I expect that there's going to be some kind of a sale at the end of it. But for the most part, when I go to hear a speaker, I want to either learn something amazing or be amazingly inspired.
Yeah, and I think we see that with many of these sort of structured workshops or seminars. It sounds like it was a Robert Kiyosaki thing that you were attending. T. Harv Eker has his millionaire mind intensive or whatever his thing is. So that's one variation on this idea of the speakers not necessarily creating their own presentation. Another one that I see quite a bit, and I'm not sure if that's what Bob was talking about. He may have been talking about exactly what you're referring to. But another area is, look, we all have messages that are probably not unique, but they're our spin or our take on our particular subject matter. Mm-hmm. And it's more about how we're delivering the message, our presentation style, and you might take a speech. A lot of speakers have writers for them, ghostwriters or speech writers for them. A lot of politicians certainly do. In my world, there's such a thing as done for you content.
If you wrote your own content.
Yeah. So that may be, and I'm not quite sure. I was reading his question a slightly different way, but I have, stuff that's done for you content that I take and then rewrite completely. But there's a framework there that so I'm not starting with a blank slate. And I do that very often with a lot of the content that I create with courses that I've written. I will take an outline of a course that I bought the license to, and then I will build a course around that, and I'll add all my other stuff. And that's very often is available to public speakers as well. Buy the slideshow, the PowerPoint presentation and the speech to go along with it, and then make it your own. And I don't know if that's what Bob was talking about, but that certainly is something that I think is actually not bad. It's helpful for people to be able to be more effective at delivering their message. You guys are having a lot of fun with the props, aren't you? To be able to make sure that they don't leave out content that might be useful. But these things are often, kind of boring and vanilla. I love vanilla, by the way. But boring to begin with, and you need to add your flavor, your personality to it. So that may be what Bob was talking about as well. Who knows? Can
I speak to that just quickly? So I have purchased presentations before, and it's interesting because I get what he's saying, because I see people who purchase the presentation and they literally memorize it line for line, word for word, and they go out. And you know what? They can do that. You could do that if you want to, but if you don't have skin in the game, if you don't have yourself inserted in, it really doesn't matter what audience you speak to. The greatest audience to speak to, in my personal opinion, is a child, any children or teenager, because as soon as you step on stage, if you start saying something that you didn't write, or you start talking about something that you have no idea what you're talking about, they're going to sniff you out quicker than So in those respects, I think it's okay to purchase presentations, but you have to know to the extent that you need to change it to make it your own. I can't. There's presentations I've purchased that it talks about having a learning disability as a kid, and people picked on me growing up on the
schoolyard. Your story. Yeah.
And I was homeschooled. I can't even use it if I wanted to, which sucks. I paid all this money and I can't even use it.
So Bob clarified a little bit. He said that he met someone, actually a very good friend of mine does this for a living. Ellen Finkelstein is a Microsoft certified PowerPoint expert, and she creates PowerPoint presentations in addition to teaching people how to create effective, powerful PowerPoint presentations. And so, that is, look, there's many of us out here who are not good at designing great images that can speak to the points that we're trying to make in our speeches, in our talks.
I call it Kimmyizing it, or adding Kimmy magic. It's got to have the Kimmy magic.
So I think the answer is that it's fine to use stuff that's done for you, as long as there's a large part of you in the presentation, whether it's the visual presentation or the verbal message that you're delivering, that you really need to make it your own. And outsourcing the slide presentations, I don't have a problem with that at all. Yeah. Do either of you?
I don't even use slide presentations because, I mean, for the most part, unless it amplifies what you're saying, there's really no reason to bring in any type of slides.
Yeah.
And that's just my own personal opinion. So.
All right, John, and then we got to wrap up, guys, because I have kept you in these seats for longer than we have ever done before. But I'm having a ball, and I hope you guys are too. So I'm new to the speaking space. How do you price yourself? I understand this is very open-ended, and time is always a consideration. But so would the group, a local chapter versus a national trade association. Who wants to take this one? Because this is not an area of expertise for me at all.
It depends on what you're trying to do. John, if you are just getting into the public speaking industry and you feel that you have some amazing content, you have great stuff to give, you can price yourself at whatever you want. Within reason. If you're charging, $350,000 as a speaker, you better show up and be able to produce some pretty awesome results for whoever you're speaking to. If I walk into a place and I'm like, hey, I'm going to charge you $70 for a 5-hour seminar, they're not going to be expecting a whole lot from me. At the same time, if I'm coming in and I'm saying, hey, you only have to pay me $70 for me to come in, as long as I can sell, and, I'm selling, a package that's $4,700, and I sell out the room, well, hey, that's a pretty good day. That's a pretty good day, in my opinion. So it depends on what you're really trying to accomplish. If you have programs and you have funnels in place to put people after these speaking engagements, then you don't really have to worry about being paid to go speak. If you're wanting to go and speak around the country, I mean, yes, you want to look at, are my fees covered? Are they paying for my hotel? Are they paying for my flight to get there? Are they paying for food? All these different small things, transportation. You want to make sure those things are covered. But it really depends on what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah, I think that in general, pricing strategy isn't always just about what is the market, what does the market bear for paying for something. It also has to do with all of these other factors that you've talked about in terms of different angles from which you can monetize the talk and the value that people are going to be receiving from what you have said. Kim, you were going to add something.
I was just remembering a story. A couple of years ago, I went to a national convention, and there was a national speaker there, nationally acclaimed, known speaker there. And I know that our company paid him $35,000 to speak at that event. Mm-hmm. The next day, somebody canceled or something, and he had to get up and speak again. And he gave the same speech as the day before. And everybody was like blown away that he didn't catch it, or maybe he was just a one-shot wonder. I mean, who even knows? But, when you're getting paid $35,000 to show up, you better have more than one speech on hand.
Yeah.
I going along with what Kim is saying, kind of a story from my end. I have a good friend who went and he was asked to be a speaker at an event. Got to the event, and he had the hotel filled with probably 300 people, I think he said, and great event. And then as he was getting ready to transition until the end, someone came up to him and said, you can't sell. You can't sell from the stage. Now, that's all he does. He doesn't have a speaker fee. He just goes in and he speaks and he sells from the stage. Now, this guy closes about 99% of the room when he speaks. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, he's told that he can't sell from the stage. So he says, okay, no problem. I won't sell from the stage. And he gets up on stage and he says, so, we are running out of time and they're kicking us out of this hotel, but I've actually called down the street, and there's another hotel that will let me come in and do another 3 hours of teaching. If you guys are interested in coming there, I will teach you the next step. Now, he closed over $1 million worth of product in one speaking engagement.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant.
When it comes to speaking, you don't have to speak. You don't have to get paid to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to have the opportunity to speak. And that's what you do with your business. When you get up, whether it's in front of a chamber, whether that's in front of a small group of people, every time you get up and speak, you're selling your business. You're selling a concept that people will come into your business and purchase something from you that day. You don't come in and say, hey, I do roofing, and I can redo your kitchen, and I can do all of these other things. You come in with one thing that you want people to take action on, just like what David says all the time whenever I talk to him. What are you trying to accomplish by doing this? And if you can constantly come back to that same question when you're getting ready to give a speech, when you're writing a speech, what are my intentions behind this? And John, for you as a speaker, I hope that your intention is to sell some type of product, because as soon as they're out the door, that might be the last time you ever see them. So get a CD in their hand, create some type of digital product that you can have people buy for $5, all the way up to something, I've got a coaching program that's $4,700 for the next year, whatever it is. Have that product. And that way you don't have to necessarily sell from the front of the stage. You just say, hey, if you like what I said today, I would love to talk with you about some of the products that I have brought for you guys. And I think that is way better. It's a way better process to go through than rather saying, oh my gosh, they're not going to pay me enough to come and speak. I'm not going to speak. Because one of my greatest mentors, Les Brown, says, speakers speak. And if you want to speak, you better go speak. You better speak every day, find a place to speak, have a story, just go and speak. Who cares about getting paid? The greatest thing in life is to find something that you'd be willing to not be paid for, but be so good at it that people would pay you for it.
That's good.
Yeah, I love that. I would say that I would hope that he's not selling a product, but that he is selling the result that will be derived from that product. That's a discussion for another day, but thank you. Thank you guys. Hey, we have run so over our allotted 30 to 40 minutes. Kim, do you want to wrap this up? Do you have any last words of wisdom to share with us before we go off the air here?
I don't think I can come up with anything better than speaker speak right now. That was a good one. Yeah. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah.
Well, brilliant. It was a fun topic. Next week, we're getting back together, and we're going to be talking about team, all capitalized, and I'm assuming that it stands for something, and I can't wait until I find out next week exactly what it stands for. So did you have something else you wanted to add there?
I have a great thing to close this out.
Okay, please.
If you are going to speak anywhere, always remember this point. Never give a point without a story, and never tell a story without a point.
Well, that's good.
If you can do that, you will be a great speaker.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Or presenter.
Live with
Brilliant.
passion.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and thanks for those of you who have joined us live today. It's so exciting to have a live audience interaction.
There's more
here.
than 3.
And we're looking forward to connecting with more of you in the coming weeks and months as well. So, hey, thanks guys so much, and we will see you back here, same bat time, same bat channel.
You.
I don't know why I said that. It just came out, and now it's permanent. So, okay.
All right, bye.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.